If everyone could take their seats that plans to stay in the council chambers. Good evening and welcome to the September 23rd Planning and Development meeting. We have a quorum. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 9th?
So move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Items for consideration. P1, the Housing and Homelessness Commission and staff recommend approval of renewal contract with Metropolitan Tenants Organization and Lawyers Committee for Better Housing in the not to exceed amount of $70,000 for landlord tenant services. The funding source is in the city's Affordable Housing Fund, Landlord Tenant Services. The Affordable Housing Fund currently has a cash balance of approximately $900,000. This is for action.
So move. Move approval, Eileen.
Alderman Rainey.
Yes, I'm very supportive of the Metropolitan Tenants Organization. However, on the bills list, I asked for some information, and I asked for their monthly reports because I really would like to see the kind of work they've been doing. Now, it could have been sent to us over time, and I could have missed it because in the manager's weekly reports, and it gets a little heavy when you're also looking at your packet and you have 600 pages. So sometimes I do skip over some things. And I thought the response that I got was pretty weak, that sometime in October I will get their monthly report for this past month. And that wasn't the answer to the question that I was looking for. So I would very much like in this week, I want all the reports that they've submitted for this contract. I have no idea how many clients are actually sitting down with at the library, how many of what kind of issues are being raised with them, how many issues they're resolving. I have no idea. And I want to know that. This is a nice chunk of change we're giving them. So I don't know what to do about this. I definitely want to give them money. I definitely want to keep them on board, but I don't know.
I'm with you, Alderman Rainey. In a discussion earlier, I didn't know if I had overlooked a report or some data or outcomes in the packet, but I do think not even to measure their performance, but even to understand what the current needs are in our community. Ms. Flax, you have a response?
I do. Thank you, Chair Ruth Simmons, members of the committee. There is a report to date on page 1120 of your packet that shows the reasons the tenants
had
have
about
called.
1,200 pages in this packet.
I know, believe me. And the response wasn't to not supply the reports. It's just that this carries us through August, and so September is the last remaining one. We can give you all the individual reports if you would like them.
Okay.
They would be in a format that shows by day and then what the key issues are. I just didn't know if you wanted.
Okay, I'll tell you what.
11 of those so far.
Just let me say something. In between this meeting and the council meeting, I will look at that, and I will get a good idea.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Sarah.
Welcome.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry about that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. P2, the Plan Commission, Preservation Commission, and staff recommend adoption of ordinance 115-019 for approval of a special use to expand community center, public and recreation center, public and for a planned development to demolish 2 single-family residence-style structures and construct a 2-story entrance addition abutting the south facade of the existing YWCA building and a 4-story domestic violence shelter abutting the north facade of the existing YWCA building. The proposal includes the following parking location, proposed parking spaces within the required front yard setback, where parking is not permitted in front yards. Loading location, propose 2 loading berths within the west interior side and yard setback where loading berths are permitted within the building envelope. Impervious surface coverage, proposed 75.5% impervious surface coverage where a maximum of 55% is allowed. Building height, proposed 4 stories at 42.4 height for a flat roof where a maximum of 2.5 stories or 35 feet to peak for a slope roof is allowed. Unenclosed loading berth, proposed 2 open loading berths within the side yard, front yard, where open are only permitted within a rear yard. This is for introduction, and we do have public comment. We're going to start with Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Alderman Simmons, members of the committee. I'll be brief. I just want to actually acknowledge the work to get to this point, and I want to start with Karen Singer, who is in the office in the chambers, the executive director of the YWCA, as well as her staff, and it looks like we have a number of volunteers. Go ahead and raise your hand so the committee can see, all in support of this wonderful effort. And I just want to, share with the committee, there's been a number of committee meetings with the residents, both coordinated by the Y staff as well as Johanna's staff. So I just want to say thank you very much, Director Leonard, you and your professional staff for walking us through this process. There's still time to fundraise for the project as well. I don't know if I can push that, but I will say it, and I think that in this very competitive time that they've done an amazing job with their fundraising efforts. So just wanted to voice my support and say thank you very much.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you. And also give my support to P4 while I'm up here. Doggy daycare.
Thank you, Alderman Braithwaite. Next, we have Sarah Malone. Good evening, Sarah. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Malone, and I am the Media Past Chair of the YWCA, and I've been a member of the YWCA board for the last 10 years. I stand here tonight with many of my fellow board members. We are incredibly proud of the service that we give to this organization. We're proud and excited about the work that the organization is doing. I grew up here. I went to Dewey School, Nichols, and ETHS. I raised my girls here, and my daughter is now raising her family here. So my roots in this community run deep. Over 30 years ago, when I needed the YWCA most, in the middle of the night, my daughter and I fled our home. We landed at the YWCA emergency shelter. Back then it was called the Battered Women's Shelter. The YWCA was a place, it was a physical structure where I felt safe, where I was safe. In addition to the physical place, the structure, the staff created a space, an environment where the seeds of transformation, of thriving, and not just surviving could take root. The YWCA provided a place and a space where I could exhale, slow down, reflect, and reconnect with me. It was a place and a space where my body and my spirit were both fed. Since that time, long ago, I have built a full and happy life, and I will be forever grateful to the YWCA for what they did for me and my daughter. The YW was truly a lifeline for me, and I know that I'm not the only one. I can only imagine the lives the organization has changed over the past 80 years, and I love to picture and imagine and envision this work and the lives the YWCA will change as it continues its work into the next 80 years. But it takes more than visioning, it takes more than imagining. To continue this great work, the service to support women and girls, their healthy lives, their economic security, and to continue advancing civil rights and racial justice, we simply need a better space, expanded facilities. And reflecting on the shelter alone, we turn away almost 1,000 women and children every year because we don't have the physical space or the capacity. Having better and expanded facilities will enable us to continue to serve our community and enable us to better create an environment, the space for healing, where their journey to safety, wholeness, stability, and transformation can begin. I stand here tonight on behalf of the Board of Directors, many of whom reside in Evanston or work in Evanston, to let you know that this project has our enthusiastic support. We know that it is the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do for our clients, it is the right thing to do for our staff, and it is the right thing to do for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And I didn't state that we're going to keep our public comment to 3 minutes. Next, we have Miss Cindy Rowlands.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Cindy Rawlings. I'm the chair of the Campus Expansion Committee at the YWCA and also the current board chair at the YWCA. And I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of Bill Stafford, who is a member of our Campus Expansion Committee. And I will try to keep my remarks condensed. Good evening. I am Bill Stafford, a 40-year Evanston resident and supporter of YWCA Evanston North Shore. As a civically engaged resident of Evanston, I've been honored to help guide their campus expansion process as a member of their planning team. The board, staff, and the Campus Expansion Committee, some of whom are here tonight, have worked diligently over 2 years to develop a facility that our town can be proud of. Located in the heart of Evanston at one of our busiest intersections, the expanded YWCA facility will reflect our community's commitment to ending racism and empowering women. The work of the YWCA is a huge asset to Evanston, and having a building that is reflective in quality and design to the important mission-driven work being done sends a powerful message about what we value as a community. YWCA has made considerable effort to engage the community in this project. They started off 2 years ago inviting the input of over 100 community members to imagine the Evanston of the future, what its residents might need, and how YWCA could best meet those needs. The message that we heard over and over was that the YWCA is a hub. It is a place for the community to come, learn, grow, be safe, heal, and build community. And its facility should facilitate this growing, important work. On top of that, we have organized over 6 neighbor meetings to solicit feedback on the designs. As a result of neighbor feedback, we have made important enhancements to the design, and I am happy to stand before you tonight as a community resident and supporter of YWCA Evanston North Shore and tell you that this is a project that I and all Evanstonians can be proud of. I urge your support on behalf of Bill Stafford. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And last on this agenda item, we have Mrs. Sandy Williams. Good evening. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. Thank you. I am Sandy Williams, and I am proud to be the Domestic Violence Services Director at YWCA. I grew up in Evanston and attended ETHS, and am now honored to serve the community that raised me. In my job, I lead our domestic violence residential and community services, and I'm happy to stand here with some of our team members. Our existing emergency shelter does not meet the diversity of needs of women and children who come to our program. It would be cost prohibitive and nearly impossible to do so. The shelter is not ADA accessible. It does not afford much needed privacy to our residents. It has limited space. As you've already heard, we turn away 1,000 women and children every year. The shelter does not have sufficient privacy to do counseling. There is no dedicated space for children and women. It is not optimal for promoting dignity and healing. Rest assured that we have done amazing work in keeping women and children safe for over 30 years, but we can do better. Our new Family Support Center is innovative, it's healing, it's trauma-informed, and it offers our residents the respect and dignity that they deserve. It will double the capacity that we have, allowing us to serve more survivors and their children, both in our shelter and in our community counseling program. We will welcome residents with respect, privacy, quiet, and space to heal and grow. For the first time, our children and youth will have a safe, private space. And our family and our staff will have adequate room to offer counseling and confidentiality. I have a deep personal commitment to Evanston and a professional commitment to ending partner violence. I hope that we can count on your help to make the dream of a better future for our survivors, women and children who pass through our doors, come true for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And thank you for the work that you're doing and all that you do to serve our community. And thank you for the financial literacy programming that you have as well. Is there any comment? Alderman Ravel?
Excuse me, I just have a couple of questions because I'm certainly very supportive of this proposed expansion. I think it's going to be really a great benefit to the community, and there's clearly a need, as we've just been hearing from our speakers. I was just interested in how the stormwater management's going to be handled, given that it's going to greatly exceed the impervious surface coverage requirement.
Hi, I'm Jack Schroeder with Land & Bone Baker Architects, and I'm the project architect for the whole project. I'm not the civil engineer, but we are retaining and servicing all the stormwater on site. It'll be underneath the north parking lot, but
Okay.
it won't tax the system anymore.
Great, okay, that's good to hear. And then there were a number of comments, I guess, starting with Dapper, about making some minor changes, I think, to the exterior of the building to make it less institutional. I was just wondering what kinds of changes were made.
We worked really closely with staff and presented multiple options and landed in a really nice place that has more varied material, brick masonry. It breaks down the scale of the building. It was kind of one large piece, and we've broken that into kind of 4 sections, varied the height, really listened to kind of all the things that we heard. There was a pitch to the entry roof that we've kind of flattened out and made a little bit more subdued. So there's a number of things. I'd have to almost run you through all the imagery, but I think we reached a really nice point. So.
Director Leonard,
you.
could you respond to that also?
Sure. When this, as the architect noted, when it came to Dapper, it was singular material, and we felt that it would, particularly given the neighborhood, it's residential, yet also there's some institutional uses in the vicinity, as you head south on Ridge, that it would make sense to try to provide a better transition. And coincidentally, this building on like every side seems to be surrounded by an architect. So we had a small neighborhood. I mean, it really was. We had a small neighborhood meeting after Dapper, and about 4 people showed up, and it was sort of like, well, actually, I'm an architect too. And as they went through, they had some very nice comments about they like the use. They had some good constructive feedback that I think has been nicely incorporated into this new design.
Thank you. Alderman Fisk?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I'm in support of this entirely, and the wonderful work that the Y does and has done, and wonderful Karen Singer, who I love. But I want to just raise an issue that I'm generally concerned about in Evanston. This is one of the most historic intersections in the entire town. The house that used to be on the corner is the location of where the only time Abraham Lincoln ever spent the night in Evanston, he spent in that house. And the house next door also is historic too. And I want to try to find a way to recognize the history of that site within the new building. and I think it's important. So I'm just going to read you a tiny little bit here. Returning to everyday life, we find an important visitor came to Evanston and stayed overnight, one who, though already well-known, was soon to become a national figure, Abraham Lincoln. Mr. Lincoln was in Chicago attending a law trial when Julius White, an old friend, invited him to be his guest. And Harvey Hurd was given the honor of accompanying Mr. Lincoln out on the train, and he describes him by quoting another man's words. Not that he knew it all, and that I knew little or nothing, but he and I were two good fellows, well met, and between us we knew lots. In the evening, the great crowd gathered carrying lighted torches and serenaded the noted man with tin pans and horns. Mr. Lincoln came out and addressed the people assembled on the lawn. Mr. White then invited them all in to meet his guest, who gave each a friendly greeting and a cordial handshake. I don't want to lose that, and I think that there's probably a way to remember that history at the location, so I would encourage the Y to, and maybe with some, I don't know, art money from the city. I shouldn't be giving money away here, but maybe there's some way that we can remind the community of the importance of this particular location to us. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify, I think that'd be a great marker, a great idea. The physical structure is not the same one as we understood it with the History Center.
The structure where Lincoln stayed was moved over to Dodge Avenue,
okay.
and it is still there.
Okay.
But
this is the site, and I totally agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, this is the location. The house next door also is historic as well, but yeah.
Yeah.
So we can talk about Dodge Avenue later.
Do we want to talk about Dodge Avenue? Okay. Okay, we will talk. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations, Wayne.
It's going to go someplace else.
We have, where are we, P3? Alderman Sufferton, will you take P3? Thank you.
Item P3 is ordinance 105-019, application for major zoning relief to expand a legally non-conforming structure at 3101 Central Street. City staff and the Zoning Board of Appeals recommend City Council adoption of ordinance 105-019, granting major zoning relief to expand a legally non-conforming structure by constructing a 580 square foot one-story garage bay enclosure. The applicant requests to expand a legally non-conforming use for an automobile repair service establishment and an automobile body repair establishment where said uses are not eligible, permitted, or special uses in the R4 General Residential District, or an eligible active ground floor use in the Central Street Overlay District. The applicant also requests the addition of 0 parking spaces where 1 additional parking space is required due to the expansion for a total of 11 legal on-site parking spaces where 12 parking spaces are required. This is for introduction.
Is there a motion?
Is there a motion?
I have a second.
Oh,
I'll second.
thank you. Is there any discussion?
So I would request that we suspend the rules, so do this for introduction and action all at once, if that's all right with everybody. Save
It's okay
2
with
trips.
me. Is that okay to do?
So I'll second the motion to suspend the rules. That's the motion.
Yep.
Alderman Wilson seconded.
I second it.
Okay, so your vote to suspend the rules first, and then take the vote on the main motion.
Okay, all in favor and a suspension of the rules?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All in favor of the P3?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. P4. The Zoning Board of Appeals and City staff recommend City Council adoption of ordinance 106-019, granting special use approval for a daycare center, domestic animal, and a special use for a kennel for Unleashed in Evanston in the I-2 General Industrial District. The applicant has complied with all zoning requirements and meets all the standards of a special use for this district. It's for introduction.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Alderman Nguyen?
I just want to note for the record that my dog has gone to Unleashed for 6 years. very happily.
Thank you for sharing. Alderman Fisk?
Okay, so we have like misbehaved dogs. My dog is also going to Unleashed as well, and they're wonderful, and they have a waiting list of, I think, 100 folks for daycare, so they need the space.
Okay. Awesome. I need to check it out. Is it only for misbehaving dogs? I have a really good dog. Okay. Okay, good. Is there any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, P4 passes. P5, Alderman Wilson?
The Plan Commission and staff recommend adoption of ordinance 114019 for approval of a special use for a plan development in the D3 Downtown Core Development District to construct a 3-story, 37,800 square foot cultural facility, live theater performance venue with 289 main seat stage and building height of 41 feet. The development includes site development allowances for the following: number of parking spaces, 0 spaces where 32 are required, street frontage property line setback, 2 feet at the first floor where 0 is required up to a minimum building height of 24 feet, but not more than 42 feet. And this is for introduction. I move introduction.
Second.
Any discussion? Oh, we have public comment. Thought you were saying bubble gum. I'm like, no, don't have that. First, we have Miss Linda Tate.
Hi, thank you. I am a resident of Evanston, and in fact, I live about 2 blocks from the proposed location for the theater, and I am speaking as a very strong proponent of it. To me, it is a win-win situation for Evanston and the theater to bring more cultural arts to our city. It will improve the downtown area. If you look on that block of Church Street, it has a lot of vacant buildings, and I think it will bring a lot of activity to that area. It's an attractive low-rise building, which I think we need more of, and it will be a boon to the commercial endeavors on that street and the restaurants and retail all throughout downtown Evanston, which we need as well. And with the Metro and the L right there, I'm not as concerned about the parking as I know a lot of you might be, but I think we're going to get a lot of people just taking public transportation there. So I think that's also a win. So I think they'll be very good neighbors. They've already shown that they want to enter into partnerships with many Evanston organizations, and I think this one is a no-brainer. I hope you vote yes for it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We have Bob Best.
Hi, thank you. I do think it's important to hear from people who live in the immediate neighborhood. I live about 1.5 blocks from where the theater will be, and I feel as if I've won the lottery. This is the neatest thing that could happen to our neighborhood. As Linda said a few minutes ago, it's a win-win-win-win-win. I don't know who doesn't win here. So I've been a resident of Evanston for 5 years, and I think we're very fortunate to live in a very magical place. I think we live in the Magic Kingdom, as a matter of fact. And now I find out Abraham Lincoln slept here. It's even better. Anyway, I think this is great, and let's add a little more magic to Evanston and let the theater come.
Thank you. Is this Doreen Price? Were you here to speak on P5?
Yes, actually, I went to the wrong meeting to address this, so it's just a repeat of what I said at the wrong meeting. Whoops. My dog comes to correct me. Anyway, he's well trained. So I just wanted to say that with the auxiliary units, dwelling units, it's a blessing that we just need to, what do you call it? to actually tweak a tiny bit, and that has to do with regard to parking, and then also allowing, when these are developed, that there's some private access, so that's one way to get around parking, because if there's private access, then the access can also act as parking. I think buildings should be taller rather than wider, because the footprint is going to matter with regard to climate resiliency, and then also with regard to ADUs, they should fully comply with some sort of a list of priorities for the city now that we're looking at our budget and our goals, and that the goals should include climate resiliency and apply to these units as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. Amy Morton.
Hello. Hi, everybody. So my name's Amy Morton. I live here in Evanston, and I also am a business owner here in Evanston. I am in the restaurant business and have a couple restaurants quite close to where Northlight is hopefully going to be. So I am a massive proponent of Northlight. I think when I think of what's important to Evanston, I think of community, I think of culture, and I think of creativity. And I think that Northlight, I feel that I know that Northlight is going to bring all of these things to us. We are a world-class city, and we've got it all. The one thing we're missing is a performing arts center. And Northlight started here. So Northlight needs to come back. I also feel that we need Northlight. I feel that we need Northlight, and I don't just want Northlight. I feel that we need Northlight for our families, and it's an incredible opportunity to open the doors to our children. They're going to do a lot more than just paid performances. It's really going to be a great opportunity for the schools, whether elementary or senior programs, to really explore the arts. And finally, we've had a massive restaurant revolution here in town. And the city makes a lot of money on the liquor tax. I believe it's the second highest in the state and possibly in the country. And we cannot fill our restaurants. There are so many restaurants with empty seats. We all have heard of and seen restaurants closing, and this will be the absolute very best thing for our restaurants as well as our downtown retail. So I hope it works out. It's an incredible theater, and Evanston deserves it. And I'm not worried about the parking either.
Thank you. This looks like Jay Hyatt, maybe?
Jan Hazlett.
Oh. Jan, I apologize. Thank you for being here.
I can't even read my writing.
Okay.
I'm Jan Hazlett. I am married to a Evanstonian. I am on the advisory board for Northlight, and I am with That Properties. And I'm here to tell you why people want to move to Evanston. Not only is it a mosaic of all things that we love, it has a strong arts component. It has world-class schools. We have a world-class university. We have fabulous architecture. We have the lake. We have wonderful, wonderful restaurants, as Amy said. And we need a world-class theater. We need to have Northlight come back. Northlight serves our community from afar. We have an education component that serves 3,500 kids. And it's 45 schools. With the transportation system that we have in downtown Evanston, it's going to make it a lot easier for a lot more kids to be part of this education offering that we have. We also partner with Family Focus, YOU, YJC, YW, the YW, Evanston Scholars, and many more. And it's just going to be so much more exciting for these kids to be able to participate in this. When people move to Evanston, they ask why everybody's so excited about it. Why do we want to be here? A lot of them are moving up from the city. They don't really want to move to a community where it feels more like a bedroom community. They want to feel like they're bringing part of the city to them. They want the energy, they want the activities, they want to be able to walk to things. They can do that with restaurants, they can do that with the lake, Northwestern, but what we're missing is a theater component. And I think it would make all the difference in the world for Evanston if we have that theater component that can serve the community, all ages and all kinds of people. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Next, we have Neil Gambow. Oh, hi, Neil.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak for just a moment on behalf of Northlight Theater. I'm Neil Gamboa, a resident of Edison. This to me looks like one of the most well thought out proposals that's been in front of this committee in a pretty long time, I think, for something this size. This says something about Evanston. When you talk about stuff that's going to happen with restaurants and all that stuff, what does it look like 30 years from now when things have changed? But you have an anchor here as Northlight Theater. They've been around for 45 years, probably going to be around another 45 years. And I think this would be a tremendous asset to this city and an anchor where we can really be proud and kind of point our finger at Chicago and say, guess what we're doing up here? So I'm in full support, and I think it's a no-brainer.
Thank you for your comment. And we have John Silverstein. Thank you, John.
I'm John Sievertson.
Okay.
And I am an architect in Evanston. I've been an architect here for 42 years. And I'm here to speak strongly in favor as well of the Great Northlight Project. Just a couple of comments. When I look at projects, especially projects that have to weave a fairly complex program into a pretty dense urban site, it's important for us to have as a goal that this new whole will be greater than the sum of its parts. Typically, a large concern of architects is the visual result of this project, and I think you've seen the design of the project, and I think it is a very wonderful design solution that will give great life to that part of the city. But when we're doing our best work, I think that we are considering a lot more than the visual aspects. I think this new whole should be greater than the sum of its parts, socially, culturally, economically, and environmentally as well. And there's no doubt in my mind that this project really hits on all of these marks, I think, very successfully. So I think it's going to be a great addition to the city as a cultural institution, but also as a very nice piece of architecture. One of my favorite architects, Aldo van Eyck, long gone, had a quote once, which I think applies here. He said that time in the image of man is occasion, and space in the image of man is place. And I really do believe that this pretty ordinary space right now will be transformed into a really important, a very important place for many great human occasions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
Thank you, and I think the speakers pretty well covered it. But of course, I always do worry about parking. But I am reassured because this space has been operating as a music venue for quite some time, for many years. So I do think that it's demonstrated that we can handle the visitor traffic. So I'm comfortable with that. So very much in support of this, and appreciate the support that we've had as we've traveled down this path.
Is there any further discussion? Alderman Nguyen?
Well, I would just like to say how pleased I am that Northlight didn't give up, and actually I think has come back with an even better project than they originally had, and how excited I am that they are coming to this space and really energizing it and enlivening it and becoming another economic engine that it was, and now will return to be here in Evanston. So congratulations.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes for introduction. And then we have items for discussion. Alderman Ravel, PD1.
So the Evanston Development Cooperative and staff request consideration by City Council of amendments to the zoning code related to coach houses and accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and refer those amendments to the Plan Commission in order to effectively expand affordable housing options across Evanston. Potential amendments include the following. 1, allow 1 ADU per principal residential structure, removing the current limitation to single-family detached residences. Number 2, waive the additional parking requirement for an ADU when there is an affordability restriction of 10 or more years for either the principal residence or the ADU, and on properties within transit-oriented development areas or within a certain distance to public transit. And 3rd, increase the maximum height for an ADU when there are increased setbacks from property lines that abut another property. And this is for discussion and referral to the Plan Commission.
Is there any discussion? Alderman Fisk?
This is just a question for Johanna. So we're talking about not only coach houses with parking below, but separate dwellings that are not strictly speaking coach houses. Is that correct?
I'll let Sarah take that, but they're a little bit different because I think there is now a definition for ADU.
Alderman Fisk, members of the committee, Alderman Simmons, Chair Simmons, we are talking only about coach houses at the moment or associated with parking, because that's the only form of accessory dwelling unit that is currently in our code. We do want to come back with much more comprehensive revisions to accessory dwelling units, but we believe that we should wait till we get more community input that we're working on getting through the affordable housing plan process, and that's a more appropriate place. So what we're doing is we're trying to tweak the regulations that are associated with coach house accessory dwelling units to make them a little more feasible in places where we have gotten a lot of interest.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I guess what I would, and thank you for that, Sarah, I appreciate that. I think that's fine. I mean, we already have them, and I don't have any problem with them. I am concerned about eliminating or waiving the parking requirement. So I guess I would say, at least in the neighborhoods in the first ward, where our streets are literally all packed up, that I would want to include some parking, at least one parking space per unit.
Okay, Alderman Ravel, and then Alderman Nguyen.
Well, I think the conditions under which we're talking about waiving the parking requirement are certainly worth considering. The idea that we would waive the parking restriction if there were a rental restriction, either for the ADU or for the main house, and eliminating it in transit-oriented development areas. I dug out this report from, not quite sure who. Research from Oregon has suggested that ADU tenants tend to own fewer cars than other households. So I think I'm really encouraging that we allow the Plan Commission to have further discussion about this. I think parking requirements can really become a barrier to expanding the addition of ADUs, and so I really would support asking the Plan Commission to consider this.
Alderman Nguyen?
I would agree with what Alderman Ravel just said about the parking issue. I like the suggestion about the affordability restriction of 10 or more years for either the principal residence, for waiving the additional parking requirement. I'd like them to study that some more. I think increasing the area in which we permit an ADU is something that we should definitely look into and move towards. We're seeing other cities in the United States which have already done that and are really working towards providing more affordable housing that way. So I think this is very good. I think I strongly support moving this forward. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, the two transit-oriented development areas in my ward that I'm most concerned about, we've had exhaustive parking studies on, and one is the area just east of the downtown. The other is around the university, just west of the university. And if staff would just go down on Sherman Avenue and take a look at how heavily that street is parked up, for example, around Noyes Street, around Foster, around Emerson, and how far it spills over into the neighborhood, that every time you add a dwelling unit, you potentially add another car, that dwelling unit is going to be entitled to have an on-street parking permit in a restricted area. So somehow or another, the area is going to get more parked up. And, you know, you can talk about whatever study you want to from wherever you want to and what your hope is for fewer cars, but the fact is you look out on the street and there are a lot of cars. And the last week when the Northwestern University started, the north end of the first ward, that was a sleepy little town, is now entirely parked up. And that is with 2 new parking garages on campus, which we're very thankful for, and additional parking up on Central Street. So I want you all, if you're not familiar with the areas, please to take the time. I will also be happy to share with you the 6-month study that Ricky Voss did for the area east of downtown, because it's very serious in my ward, and that's why I'm asking for 1 parking place. And if the ADU doesn't want it, the homeowner can rent it out.
Thank you. Ms. Flax, you have that?
I certainly try to
Correction.
capture all those comments, but we're asking simply for a referral to Plan Commission, so I think all of those parking considerations have to be considered at Plan Commission. Is what I'm taking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. Alderman Fisk, yes.
Thank you, Sarah, and I'm sure you'll be at the Plan Commission to address this. I just don't want to have to go to the Plan Commission to talk about parking, so that's why I wanted it to be included in the message that you will be taking to them, that there is a concern.
Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the referral is, Alderman Fisk, specifically your referral to the Plan Commission for 1 parking space.
In that area.
Any others?
I think we should give them the latitude to, discuss options. So I don't want to limit them to just, the one thing. So I think they should have a conversation and get back to us with what they think makes sense. And they might agree with that, and they might say something different, but, we'll have the benefit of their discussion and their materials, and we'll know what they're, I just don't want to send it to them with a mandate or having it sound like a mandate. I don't think that's what you intended to do. But,
right, no, right. I want that to be for discussion, but I also want them to understand where the TOD areas are. And we're absorbing a lot in these TOD areas. So
yes,
I want to be realistic about this, because it'll create a problem if we're not.
And Alderman Fisk is absolutely right about that area. So if you could look at it, I don't know if it's a possibility for it to be by, I don't know, how would that be, census tract, or what? How could you, TOD area or not? I don't know if we can differentiate where the allowance is given for the parking and where it is not, but I definitely don't want to not explore this as an option, because it's a great way to expand our affordable housing across the city of Evanston. So, Alderman Nguyen?
Yes, I think that we're probably doing some of the Plan Commission's work, but I think some TOD areas, for instance, there are TOD areas in other parts of the city in the 3rd Ward where this might work, but I do appreciate what happens when in the wards where we have so many Northwestern students, and it is impossible to park in those areas. So if they could, perhaps the Plan Commission should study those areas and figure out what's an appropriate standard that to have the waiver or the exemption based on parking saturation levels for most of the year, because we can determine that. And then, have it perhaps be revisited every 5 years to determine whether those parking saturation levels still exist at that point. So there's some ability to revisit it and determine whether we still need to have that exemption, maybe at a 10-year mark, something like that. I'm looking way down the road, but.
Yeah, and the parking challenges aren't limited to these areas, even in the neighborhoods. We have, especially on street sweeping days, you know, you're walking sometimes a couple of blocks, especially if you're getting home late at night. So certainly there may be a study that shows that, you know, an accessory dwelling resident may not have a car, but many of them will. So I don't want to exclude it to that research. Is there any further referral? Alderman Fisk, did you have a final comment? No. Okay. Are you clear on that?
We will look very carefully at parking in all neighborhoods and both look at the parking needs of different areas and also consider what is an appropriate restriction if parking were to be waived for any specific unit. And I will probably consult with individual aldermen to make sure that I have the areas right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We don't need to have a vote on that. Okay. Are there any items for communication? May I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? Our meeting is adjourned. Our city